I wonder if you will ever let anyone not be prejudiced.
Good question. Probably not.
As they first walked into this courtyard in Gloucester, Massachusetts, they were convinced that for them, brotherhood would last forever. 12 college students representing the spectrum of middle-class attitudes, of different religions, different races, from different sections of the country. Their common bond, a denial that they are uncommonly prejudiced. For 1 week, they are to live together to test that conviction. A workshop created by National Educational Television to determine the degree of prejudice in educated America. Terry Alexander, Jewish, from Atlanta, Georgia. Philip Chan, from Oceanside, New York, Harvard University. Sandra Clementine Walker, Radcliffe College, from Tuskegee Institute, Alabama. Dennis Feldman, Beverly Hills, California, Harvard, self-described Jew by birth. Joelle and Richard Brown, Jews by married just a few days before. Linda Shen, Radcliffe, from Hamden, Connecticut. Tom Thompson, Catholic, living and attending college in Providence, Rhode Island. Carla Halstead, Boston University. Her father is a Protestant minister here in Gloucester. Gil McMillan, Newark, New Jersey, Brandeis University. Wayne Grudem, Harvard, a fundamentalist Baptist from Eau Claire, Wisconsin. Ann Pepper, Catholic, Boston University, hometown Newton, Connecticut. Working and living with them, Max Birnbaum, director of the Boston University Human Relations Laboratory.
My task was to stimulate and encourage the members of the group to become aware of their attitudes and feelings and to express them. Prejudice in our society has many targets: the Negro, the Jew, the Oriental, the Puerto Rican, the Protestant, and national and ethnic groups. Social class and generational factors often make for significant differences in the awareness and the mode of expression of prejudice. We lived together for 6 days and nights, and after many starts and hesitations, we melded into a society of our own. This is a distillation of that community's experience.
You see a girl, and you say, all right, this is a wonderful girl, she looks fine, nice body. And you want, you ask her out. And then you talk to her for a while. And you say a couple of things, and certain the blackness comes up. And all of a sudden you realize, this girl isn't going out with me. She doesn't want me. It wouldn't matter. I could substitute, anybody, and she'd be happy. And she's out with my skin.
For me, blackness isn't that important. Because the way I've been brought up, all the Negroes I've lived around are just not particularly Negroid, if you know what I mean. I mean, they're black, but they aren't soulful. They aren't, being being black is a hell of a being white.
I know this is particularly true in Brandeis, is that it seems to be some sort of, by virtue, apparently, the Jewish character of the university, is that even though people might be quite bigoted emotionally, they intellectualize it. I'd rather confront I'd rather see a man with an axe handle in his hand who was dead set against me or against my skin, than to have some joker skulking about the periphery of the group saying, oh yes, you're a wonderful person, and perhaps not even realizing for himself that he has this within him. I make a basic ground rule assumption about white people in general, and people have to disprove it. It's not, this is for my own well-being and mental health. I assume the person's a moderate bigot, and then we work away from that.
You said that perhaps because you were in a Jewish-sponsored institution, that this becomes a special problem.
It seems to me that this is a trait exhibited by the Jewish community.
Haven't you ever encountered anti-Negro prejudice on the part of Orientals in America?
I've had very little contact.
Most Orientals feel more openly hostile to Negroes than most other Americans.
Why?
I'm not sure. Part of it's a certain dislike for the civil rights movement, because there's people that have worked for the civil rights are saying, the government, you know, give us training, give us this and that, and so we can become like you. And the Orientals take a great deal of pride saying, you know, we had San Francisco and we had riots too, but we made it on our own. Now why the hell are you taxing us and using our tax money to raise you up when we could do it ourselves? The reaction against Negroes is very, very strong. Really very strong.
Gill soon became the focus of the group because he challenged their liberal assumptions that it is possible, rationally, to resolve Negro white anxieties.
I don't see, Gil, that you can totally reject this type of thing. If I want to be nice to him, it doesn't have to be hypocritical at all. I can be nice to him out of consideration.
That's not the point. You start being so nice, for instance, say you live in a town and there's one Negro kid, right? And everybody in the world is throwing bricks at him, except you. Well, that's fine. You know, you say, how you doing, Harry? You meet him in the store, you say, you want a cigarette? You give him a cigarette? You know, that's fine, all right?
Yeah.
But when you run around, you know, and say, oh, wait, you want to come with me tonight? Come on. You know, and you cut everybody else off, you cut yourself
No, well,
off. That's what it means, overcompensation.
I wonder whether we are really ready to face up to our own prejudices.
You're making it sound so scary. And I think you're trying to give it a sense of drama that it just doesn't have. Would you really like to find out how prejudiced you are? It seems unreal to me. I mean, you know, you make it sound like if I say, yes, I'd like to find out how prejudiced I am. Somehow I'm thereby submitting myself to what's going to be a cathartic experience or something, you know. And then I can't visualize that it's going to be that way.
He sounds like he doesn't think he has any prejudice, but I think he might.
I might have some prejudice, and you know, and I may be able to hold it up and say, well, Wayne, there are certain prejudices that you hold. But what I am holding back against is this tendency that I feel, you know, maybe you want me to have of saying, aha, here's a prejudice, aha, here's another prejudice, and here's another one, and look at how prejudiced I am.
Like, you know, the other day I met Gil, and I said, hey, do you do the boogaloo? Because I assume that almost all Negroes know how to do the boogaloo, except me.
Someone asked me this morning if, I guess Phil asked me if I was sort of angry at Gil or something for, yeah, because I was sort of, you know, wondering if he could ever accept me, and I never really wondered about being accepted. You know,
Would it bother you if he did?
Probably. I think anybody's not accepting me would bother me.
I want to ask Gil something. Do you differentiate among various types of white people?
Yeah.
According to groups?
Yeah.
React very quickly. How do you feel about Catholics?
Catholics are different, unless they're Italian.
What does that mean?
I don't like Italian Catholics.
How about Jews?
Jews? Jews, I suspect most of all.
Why?
Because they're liberals.
Have you ever gone out with a Negro girl? Phil?
Me?
Yes.
No.
Why not?
I've met very few that I found attractive, physically attractive.
Would you find it a problem to go, personal problem, to be seen with one?
Maybe, much more so than a white.
My father looks white, and I don't know. He may have something about looking white, but
Positive or negative?
negative. You know, it gets to be a little touchy for Daddy sometimes. Of course, you know, it's an advantage living in the South because he could always go any place he darn well chose. But really funny things happen, like I walk down the street in a small town holding hands with my father, and the looks we get are just incredible. You know, what is this lecherous old man going out getting a Negro girl to walk down the street with? Yeah, it's really incredible. It is, but the problem is people didn't do it on the main street of town. They did it behind the barn, which is probably how my father got the way he is anyway, you know. But I had a grandmother on my mother's side who was an American Indian. But nobody ever gives you any grief about that, you know. Doesn't mean I have to go back to the reservation. The ghetto, maybe, but the reservation, no.
I think that someone said once, every morning you wake up and you shave, and it means something, because you look at that face, and that face says, you're black, baby, and you're an American. And it means a lot. And every black man who wakes up in the morning has to go through that same change.
Yeah, but the difference is whether the difference you see in the mirror means something inside to you, or whether that's a label that's been put on being black.
It's what those who think and function as human beings.
It does in establishing truth and fact as to whether or not Negroes are different from anybody else.
But how many people know?
Oh no. Oh no. Sandy, biology doesn't mean a thing. It really doesn't. It's what people believe. It's not what's true. It's what people think.
I mean, you know, black is good. Black is what we're all going to be. We're going to be black like black, you know. As if that were the whole picture, and it's not. It's just a part of the picture.
Does that isolate?
Well, as some people advocated, it does, and this is the kind of thing that frightens me.
Would you rather have been born white?
No.
You're not quite being honest.
Well, I'll admit, by virtue of the fact that I'm here, that I'm dressed as I am, and that I'm doing the things that I am, namely going to school where I am, and that I'll probably end up doing things that I will do, that I'm going to, even if I don't consciously admit that I'd like to be white, I'm going to emulate.
Well, what are you emulating? Are you emulating white people, or are you just emulating happiness for yourself? I mean,
Happiness for myself and America. Happiness.
Do you think you should dress as an African?
Hold it. Happiness for myself is, since I am an American,
Yeah.
regrettably, since I am American and in America, then that becomes white America. I must emulate what white America defines as happiness.
Terry, how do you feel when people say to you that you don't look Jewish? What's your immediate reaction? One of pleasure?
In a way, because I know what they're thinking.
What are they thinking?
They're thinking of usually large nose and very kinky hair.
Nose and kinky hair.
Yeah.
Dark kinky hair.
Dark kinky hair.
Short, fat, and bald with a large nose.
This is usually what people are thinking of. I'm not saying this is.
Jews, as a rule, have dark kinky hair?
I'm not saying it's a rule, but this is the stereotype I've encountered.
Well, the number of guys at Brandeis who straighten their hair and the number of girls who must.
Straighten the hair.
Straighten it, curl-free.
Yeah.
Curl-free.
Jews have kinky hair? Your hair? Dennis is Jewish.
Dennis, you don't look Jewish.
What's your immediate reaction?
I don't like people that say that. That's my immediate
What did you
reaction.
think yesterday when I thought you were Catholic?
You didn't get on my good side yesterday. No, I don't like people to say, oh wow, you are Jewish. I mean, it's the first thing that bothers me. How I look is secondary. The fact that they're starting to think of me as Jewish, I don't like. I'm me, and that's who I want to be. And if people start thinking me as Jewish first and me second, or even Jewish much at all, I don't like it.
Why not?
Because I don't want to be grouped with a whole group of people, and I don't want to be stereotyped. I'm me.
If you say, I don't want to be considered at all in terms of my group identification, what are you saying about your feelings concerning the...
That's not
No, I'm
true
just
at all.
saying, I'm just saying where it comes in. If you, let's say you're an Arab, as far as you're concerned as an Arab, I would assume I'm a Jew. That's all I am. Boom. Now, if you're not an Arab, then you start being concerned about me as a person. Whether I'm a Jew comes maybe 7th, 8th, or 10th.
The interweaving of Jews and Negroes continued into the next day.
I worked in a grocery store for 6 years, and I was standing there one day ringing the cash register, and there was a colored guy in the line, and this woman who pastel Jew and her little daughter. And I mean that, you know, somebody's got a 5-room ranch house, and his wife wears pink capri pants, and he's short, fat, and bald. Anyway, so the little girl, you know, sort of turned to her mother, and she pointed up at the Negro guy and said, "Look, Mommy, that guy's all dirty." You know, I think, you know, I think that's more, little kids do think that because dirt is black. And I think that does have a little effect on little kids who've never seen, this little girl obviously never saw a Negro guy, you know? So right away she assumes bad because it's black.
Do you believe in something sort of called latent prejudice? In other words, a guy can sort of be your friend and everything, and he sort of acts okay about it. But all of a sudden, if you like get into a fist fight with him, you know, he really gets angry. You know, just when you push him the right way, he says, someone can make this gesture, can make that gesture. They're very different gestures than just the tone of his voice. And I didn't like the tone of your voice. If guerrilla warfare broke out in the streets, I wouldn't turn my back on you, Tom.
No, I don't.
The idea that Tony's going to put you in a group, in a big, you know, group, and he's not going to judge you individually bothers me very much. Because I insist that people are going to judge me as me. And if they're not going to judge me as me, I get the feeling that they're just going to condemn me with a whole group.
Mm-hmm.
Or even praise me with a whole group. It's sort of, it's tricky. It's the same way I want to be
right.
praised or condemned on my own merits.
Yeah, and this is even my roommate, who I'm pretty close to. And then suddenly I think, well, maybe we're not so close. That if she can think of me that way, it's
Phil, would
Jewish
you come here
traits
and
of
tell me
my
one
race.
thing? Do you feel the same way as I do about latent prejudice?
Oh, yeah.
Something
Well, like,
that-
haven't you ever
solid.
felt like being part of a race riot?
Yeah, and that's maybe what scares me most, because, you know, if I can do it, who can't?
Yeah.
If I can do it, who can't? If Tom got me to hit him in the mouth,
Yeah.
in a way that would help justify his prejudice.
Sure.
Because then he could say, oh,
He
look,
wants that.
the Jew hit me in the mouth, man. Jews, look at how, you know, that doesn't help. What good, you know?
Yeah, okay, sure.
I mean, so should I try to fight it in that way? Is the proper thing to go hit him and bigot in the mouth? Or is the proper thing, you know, to do something that'll be more effective, that'll help the situation?
I don't know.
Hit him in the mouth,
Yeah.
which he almost seems to want.
This is part of the anti-Semitic feeling. You know, these are a bunch of jellyfish. I think. I don't know. But I mean, the response could be. And this is part of, maybe this is part of my feelings about Jews. Yeah, I mean,
you know, I could, well,
You
what
never
good would it
felt
do to
that-
hit you now, you know? I mean,
wouldn't do you any
you're
good,
bigoted, so I should hit, it just aggravates. I mean, are we trying to solve, or are we trying to
We're
justify?
trying to understand. Right now, we're trying to understand. We're not trying to solve
But see,
problems.
He's taking on a situation so he can help justify his prejudice in a way. So,
Well, I'm not trying to justify it.
well, I'm talking about Tom.
Okay, okay.
And I don't want to help him justify it. I want to say, you know, no, I won't help him justify it. I'm trying to do the thing that'll help remove it. And he's worried about it as long as I don't help him justify it. That's why he shakes, I think.
Maybe.
If I'd hit him in the mouth, then it, you know, it'd be simple for me to say, you know, dirty bastard.
I know another guy who started a race riot in Fort Chester last summer.
For no reason.
Yeah, he shot.
What?
He shot a colored kid who was playing craps in an alley. He was bending over. He was driving by in a car and shot him in the ass with a .22. that started quite the riot. People just did all.
No reason that maybe on the surface. I mean,
Oh yeah, I mean, there's some kind of silly hostility, but it's it's not she didn't do it for a purpose, It's like throwing a brick at somebody you don't like.
But why would they start fights if they weren't prejudiced?
Well, you are prejudiced. I didn't say you weren't.
Well, how can you say they really don't care? If
You don't really care,
If
is
you
the
didn't
point.
really care, you wouldn't bother them.
No, it's not like that. You don't care one way or another about whether they, live next door to you or they don't live next door to you, right? You just don't like them.
My reaction is that, of course, people like Tom upset me very much, but, I didn't associate with them before I went out with Richard, Of course, I won't associate with them now. Even on theory, not in practice, I dislike them intensely. Our children will have better choice of friends, I hope. I don't feel that I'm denying my whiteness or Richard's denying his blackness by us marrying each other.
It's pure prejudice, because it's my country type of prejudice. These are our girls, leave them alone type of thing, and I know that's what it is. So it's more latent than anything else, but it's pretty strong. As far as visceral reaction comes, it just I can't. Condone it only on that level, you know what I mean?
You get enraged?
Yeah.
Could you conceive of yourself actually using physical force or allowing other people to use physical force?
You mean standing by?
Yes.
Yeah, probably.
You probably would.
Would you feel differently about a white man marrying a black woman? I mean, would that enrage you as much?
No, obviously it wouldn't, you see, because the reason I think that I feel that strongly is because, like these are our women, see? But when you're talking about the guy doing something, he can take care of himself. And if you see a Caucasian guy with a Negro girl or a black girl, you always check to see whether she's nice looking. And normally, with the sexual phobias, it's like that. She's some sort of super sex queen or something. And that's just a.
What do you mean sexual phobias? You mean sexual fantasies?
Yeah. The normal kind of thing that people say there.
What do they say?
For instance, that there seems to be an image of more prowess attached to the Negro male.
Last night you were talking about different sexual planes, kind of, that are attached to males of the three different races, and you admitted that Oriental males were by far and large on the lowest plane.
If I were in bed with some woman and I couldn't bring her to the heights of glory that Gil could, since I wouldn't be presenting the same kind of threat to your ego, and therefore, because
if the image of fantastically athletic, blah blah blah, big stud type Negro kid. See what I mean? That would give it but that's not me personally. But I know people who've said that.
The mood of the experience became more somber. Those who had denied the existence of prejudice in themselves are now taking a second look.
I'm concerned. That is, yesterday I felt that here we were from a very objective standpoint able to examine our society, examine the older generation that is so prejudiced and leading to all these riots and things like that. What's wrong with that? And then maybe they can see us and maybe they can understand why they're doing it and maybe they'll stop. But now I don't know, because now I see that there are some of these latent feelings right here. And for instance, Gil.
It's the young who riot.
It is. And I wonder, Gil, I wonder if you will ever let anyone not be prejudiced.
Good question. Probably not.
Do you want to keep everybody's prejudice strong and you want to keep everyone segregated. You know, I just don't understand, because I've never come across anyone like you before, and I'm just completely befuddled.
It's been very upsetting to me. I mean, I could have cried when Gil was talking.
You said you're anti-Semitic, haven't you? You didn't use the word, but you sort of said you hated it.
Are you getting paranoid, Dennis?
It's happening, it's happening, okay.
No, did you, you sort of,
Did I say it?
well, do you?
Am I anti-Semitic? Okay, yeah.
You are.
Gil represents, I think, a big threat to me, because he's proposing a world that I don't think I have any place in. People like Gil hurt me, I think, more than anybody else ever can. I mean, he's proposing a complete exclusion, sort of. He wants to put me in a society where the only reason I'm there is because I'm black. And I'm not sure that's enough of a reason to make people live together.
Terry.
Yeah.
How did you feel about the pastel Jew?
Of the pastel Jew, well,
Can I say something?
Mhm.
That designation might not bother you as a designation. In other words, you might not fear that you have those traits, but you might fear people that round you up. I'm more concerned about the person who says it. But that person, I feel right away is dangerous. If he thinks that way, I think he's dangerous. It isn't that I'm worried if I'm in
Have you
or
ever made comments about Negroes which, if they heard, might cause them embarrassment? Have you ever used the word? Have you thought the word?
Other than in jest. Other than in jest.
Anne said something to me as I went out. I asked her why she was sitting there. It struck me as a comment that should be shared with the group.
Well, I was a little bit disturbed to hear everyone talking about being afraid to turn your back on someone else. Because granted, perhaps I'm too idealistic. I know that I'm naive, but I'd always been under the impression that the older generation was the bad guys, and they were the ones who had messed this world up the way it was. And I figured that we'd come in and we'd be more open-minded and sort of straighten things out. And I just couldn't believe what everyone was saying about okay, you're going to be very friendly with Tom, but if things get a little rough, then you'll just shoot him in the back.
Dennis, show her your elbow. We were just fooling around, and I backed him up into a rock, and then he tripped over the rock, and he knocked one of those statues over. And I knew that there was some danger in him hurting himself, but I just pushed him up against the rock. And I don't know if it was just fooling around, or maybe there was something else.
I don't think that's what I've said. If you could blame the older generation as being responsible for all this.
I mean, I always had.
You always have, but now you're beginning to see that the danger is where?
Right here. And I'd taken it for granted that we could see what was wrong with the older generation, that we would trust people. And you're just getting rid of all the trust.
And have you run into any prejudice of any kind? Ever?
I don't know that that's fair.
Well,
It's fair.
of course.
Let her answer the question.
No, seriously, have you?
My own prejudice?
Well, prejudice against Catholics. You're Catholic, aren't you?
No, I haven't.
I've run into a little. Enough to realize that it's there and it threatens me. And I sometimes feel threatened. And if someone I don't just constantly walk around feeling threatened, but if someone somehow brings it up, like, talks about a pastel Jew, suddenly I realize that's a threatening gesture. In other words, that makes it a war.
The 6 million Jews bit, like, you kind of cornered the market on prejudice there with that. And especially if I was in the Warsaw Ghetto, I would have harbored any one of those guys. But I wouldn't harbor anyone who marched to slaughter. Passively.
my feelings too.
I wouldn't, and I have absolutely no respect for it.
I'm always having an example of the extermination of the Jews thrown up in my face, comparisons about, what we, the Jews, have been through. But I look at it like this: if even half of those 6 million Jews, when the Gestapo came for them, greeted the Gestapo with a barrage,
Pots and pans,
even rocks, they would have cut that out very soon. It was the reason that the Jews were slaughtered was because the reason they were slaughtered as lambs is because they went to the slaughter as lambs.
Tom, may I ask you a question?
Sure.
How do you feel about the Christians who went to the lions? Like lambs? Okay.
Probably the Bible is more perfect than any human book ever written. But that's not the point. The point, to me, is the fundamental truth of the divinity of Jesus Christ and the fact that he can right now be alive to me and I can have a personal relationship with God. You say, am I a fundamentalist? For instance, do I believe that Christ walked on the water? Yes. Do I believe in the virgin birth? Yes. And do I believe, the feeding of the 5,000? Yes. Breaking the loaves and fishes. Hello there, Erasmus. How's things going up there in Minneapolis? Well, Martin, we're doing pretty well with the churches. Got a member in the Congregational Church, Methodist Church, and a member in the Catholic Church, and a member in the Episcopalian Church, and a member in the Lutheran Church. And he said, well, Rasmus, what about the Baptist Church? Ain't there lots of Baptists up there? And I said, well, Martin, we had a member in the Baptist Church, but how long are they supposed to hold them under that water anyhow? Well, I laughed at that really hard when I heard it the first time. Because I thought it was funny. And nobody here identified with it and didn't laugh.
How do you feel telling a dialect story? Do you know that Negroes resent whites imitating dialect?
Yes, and I know that I can't imitate the dialect well either, and that's what I questioned in my mind while I was waiting, just before I told the joke.
But you have told it outside this room.
Yes.
And you found it funny.
Yes, people laughed. Nobody laughed here.
How about, why does a Jew always answer a question with a question? Why shouldn't a Jew always answer a question?
I think it makes a difference who tells a joke. Often I feel perfectly comfortable when Jews are telling Jewish jokes. But somehow when an outsider tells Jewish jokes around Jews, you begin wondering, for one thing, I think whether the person who tells it does believe somewhat in the stereotype. You don't know for sure. But when a Jew tells it, you know that the Jew probably doesn't believe in this. And you feel more comfortable. And you feel it's more his place to be doing this than an outsider.
And the Jews, of course, in the third grade Catholic parochial school, is a bad guy. When I went there, he isn't anymore. But when I went there, he was. You know what I mean? But as the Catholic grows up, he begins to find out what it says in St. Paul's Epistle to Romans, where the Jew is the trunk of the tree for which we are the branches.
The longer we were there, the more minority group members began to explore their negative feelings toward the dominant majority.
Well, I have had certain feelings that were somewhat anti-Gentile, not totally, but I've shied at people I felt were at all evangelic. Anybody I thought might try to convert me or think that I needed saving or something. When I first met Wayne, in fact, I was a little afraid he'd be like that, and I felt she might think I was good material for a conversion of sorts, or trying to, as though Christianity were the only true way of believing, and that you went to hell if you didn't believe, and so on.
Terry, do you think that I believe in a very exclusive sort of religion? In other words, you can't come to God other than through Jesus Christ. Would you say that I believe that?
I think perhaps you do.
Let's take a break now, and I understand we're going to reconvene out there in the courtyard. How powerful are the feelings of prejudice? Even these soothing surroundings could not soften the increasingly abrasive impact of one group member on another.
What are your prejudices?
My prejudices, they're not really clear-cut, along racial lines or anything.
Well, what are they clear-cut along?
I don't know. I wish I did.
Ask Tom why he was shaking.
I can't stop it. It's getting worse right now.
Why?
You people scare me silly.
Why?
Well, I've been, totally honest. I try to start so many fights. Stop feeling, you just sort of go around like a robot in a computer.
No, maybe it's a different kind of antagonism. I mean, you said things that have offended me very seriously. Certainly the thing not to do would not be to blow my cool. I mean, I can just stand here with a hand that's totally straight, or almost. And you'll be shaken and I won't, and that's the way that's the way I react.
Do you want to develop hard feelings? I mean,
You want to talk about prejudice, right?
go ahead.
Prejudice isn't, you don't sit around and say, well, he's got 3 and I've got 4, and I know his, but, I'm not quite sure whether it's right or not, and, but I like him anyway, and all that kind of good stuff. That's just baloney.
So you're trying to say something across here? Say it.
Tom is a bigot. He's an honest bigot. He's honest about his bigotry, but when a bigot trembles, I frighten. I mean, when he gets really upset, who's he going to take it out on, me?
You know what Gil told us the other day about when he was a little kid, he used to fight with the Italians, No, I've got a Negro prejudice when I see 5 Negro guys in the corner in my neighborhood. I go across the street, and maybe for absolutely no reason.
Made uneasy by the intensity of their encounter, the group left the compound and attended a high school dance in town. And the next day, this discussion.
Last night, when I was dancing, I danced with Sandy, and I noticed this girl looking at us, and she was cute. And yet she was looking, kind of like this. And so the next dance came, and I went up and asked her to dance. And she was glad to dance with me. And I'm no big stud. But, I wasn't...
I did something for you.
Now, wait a minute. It was the worst dance all night. It was when that drummer started getting carried away. And I wasn't charming the poor girl at all. And yet she stayed around, she wanted to talk to me and everything. And she was really... I'd acquired some mystique. Really.
Stimulated by their attendance at the high school dance, significant memories of childhood began to well up.
I think it had to do with a girl named Geraldine. I don't know, Geraldine and I were in love, as in love as you can be in 4th grade. And I went home with Geraldine once. And, there was girl Geraldine. And I said, Geraldine, I love you, and all this sort of stuff. Went home, met Mama. Mama cast a dark eye on what was going on. She said, this Gil McMillan, with a name like Gil McMillan, good Irish Catholic kid. It's all right. And then there's Mama, turned a cold eye. Geraldine didn't say a word to me for the rest of the time I knew her. And I knew her for 3 years after that. Not a word. Wouldn't even look at me. 3 years. And we had been the best of friends, 4th grade, 3rd grade, 2nd grade, 1st grade, kindergarten type friends.
for 4 or 5 years. That racked me. That did it for life, I think. I really do.
Yeah.
I mean, it really did it for life.
Do you really think, bothers me, that I've been deluded for the past 5 years about being accepted by people who are at school with me? That's the kind of impression I got, you know. Put the dark-skinned one up on a pedestal.
Carla, you didn't go to the dance last night. Would you feel any hesitancy about inviting this group to your father's church tomorrow?
I never even thought of inviting the group to my father's church. My reaction was that I didn't want to go to that church because that's the church I always have to go to. Now, if you're going to suggest that the group go to my father's church tomorrow morning, I don't say no. The first feeling that I had was that you're trying to get me to say that I don't want them to come to my church for some reason. But that's what I see you.
I'm speculating that may be possible.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's what I see anyway. Only I don't think that's true. Hey, you're still not satisfied with my answer, right?
Are you?
I am, yeah. But I'm still very suspicious of everyone here, and that I don't believe that they believe me.
You think she's prejudiced?
Yeah, of course.
How?
It's prejudice. I mean, it's anti-black, in a sense. It's anti-anything that isn't what you are.
One incident in my early schoolhood years has had a real effect on the way I look at all, I guess it would be more Gentiles than anyone else. But on the first day of kindergarten, and this is sort of the classical story, there was a tall, thin fellow who just greeted me with a dance and a song and various chants about slanty eyes and black hair and etc. You know, how much of this is carried over, I don't know. But it seems to me that ever since then, that in all the situations in which I can have some kind of social power, I will always use it to some degree against a guy like you. And maybe this is just me, but I don't know. I somehow think that this one little trauma has greatly influenced all the way I look at everything around me, and the way I treat the people in any kind of a group situation. Maybe it's only me, but I had this one incident that I can remember very clearly, and I know that whenever I meet someone that's tall and thin and obviously waspish looking, although you're not a wasp, there'll always be a certain amount of power play to cut him down.
You aren't the only one who took an almost instantaneous dislike to Tom. I did. Joel did, I think. We talked about it. Richie did.
The conflict of faiths was pervasive throughout. It was easy to be a member of a dominant faith, a struggle for the minority to maintain its identity.
We had a long talk, like the first night, about what we believed and how we believed. Now, we disagreed, in other words, on sort of doctrine, right? We sort of agreed on everything, but sort of whether Jesus Christ was the Son of God, and, we sort of agreed that we both sort of do the same things and we wanted the same things for people, didn't we?
You mean, do I feel that in a given situation involving human dignity, would you act the same as... Well, I think your response would be just as courageous, if that's what you mean.
But do you think it would be just as sort of...
I think it might be different, because I think our standards of value might differ in a few other cases, a few other areas.
Well, do you think yours is sort of better because you have this thing with it?
Well, yes.
You do?
Yes.
See, I don't. I think mine's as good as yours. I think yours is great, and I think mine's great. And I think Tom's is great. And I think Tom and I might, differ in part. But on the general, we're trying to do the same thing. Do you, Tom, think we are?
Yeah, but mine's better than yours.
implies.
What makes your faith better than somebody else's faith?
I don't.
Joel? I was talking this morning, Gandhi, who was not a Christian, was a very fine person. I think if he...
Not as fine.
No, wait a minute. No, I think if he were a Christian, he would have been finer.
Nobody's going to, cut his wrist right here on the ground and say, see, I've got the values. There's the proof.
No, but Dennis,
all we can say is, we're going forward and we hope we got it.
Dennis, maybe you have the values and maybe you won't discriminate. Maybe you will invite Richie and Joel over on a summer afternoon to your house. But the question is, 90% of the world won't. And are you going to do anything other than your own example to help change that other 90%?
And I said there's a spectrum. If it's a Nazi president, I said I'd shoot him. And that's a big thing to do, because I don't think killing is so great. I'm not going to shoot the people that don't invite Richie and Joel to their house on a summer afternoon. I can tell you that, too. I'm not committed to that.
The final session. By now, the group had created a small society of its own, a society which mirrored the world outside. And in this mirror, they saw themselves and the parental influences which helped shape them.
Like my father's in the intellectualized style stage, or if he reads about civil rights or something like that, or God damn the people who don't give other people rights and things like this. So I was hearing all this. I never saw him practice anything, but I never questioned if he would practice what he was preaching, type thing. And then when I went away to camp, it was interracial camp. It was too late then. I already found out for myself that people are people, and be proud of what you are.
Gil said I had a problem about being Negro, and I do. I'm sure I do. And I was talking about it a little bit afterwards with Terry and with Gil. I think I hadn't mentioned it before because, it's a national television program, and my parents are probably going to see it somewhere. And the people that at home, and I think some of my resentments are based on, are going to see the show. And it's an embarrassing situation. After a while, you get a little tired of having black-white going on among a group of Negroes. Maybe it's just a minority feeling. Maybe all Jews get together and talk about being Jewish. But I just get so sick of it. 5 o'clock in the morning coming home from the airport, black, white, we, they. 3 o'clock in the morning after being up all day, black, white, we, they, all during, throughout the day. You get so tired of it, especially when some of your good friends are white. And I resent the fact that a lot of Negroes don't really make distinctions between people. I guess I resent their prejudices, which is, kind of like having a reverse prejudice on my part. Which is why I feel hesitant to identify with being a Negro very strongly, other than, just the fact that I know I'm a Negro. Because it gets to be petty sometimes.
You were reared in a Protestant family. As you grew up, did you grow up with anti-Catholic feelings? Was this part of the culture?
Yeah. Because I think just in learning about how Protestantism started from Catholicism, just why, that it was because that there was something wrong in the Catholic Church, and therefore you associate something wrong in the Catholic Church, that they're more dogmatic and that they're more narrow-minded. These two things I associate with people who are Catholic.
Right.
And I remember a joke that I heard about how a litter of kittens were born, and the first day the priest would walk by and say, "Are their eyes open yet?" And I, being Protestant, said, "No, they're not." And the second day the same thing happened. "No, they're not." 7th day he walked by and he said, "Are their eyes open yet?" And I said, "No, they're still not. They're Catholic kittens." And he said, "Oh, they're Catholic kittens." And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, that's nice." So the priest walked by again, and the next day he came by and their eyes were open. And I said, "Yes, they're Protestant kittens now." Now, this is a story that I heard from my father.
Gil, how do you feel when you see a black woman with a white man?
Tears me up a little bit. It's taken me It took me 3 years in school. This year was the first year that, I actually tried to date a white girl and care about her rather than her body. When she just wasn't something to roll around in the hay with. The first year, it's taken me 3 years, longer than that, all through high school too. That long before I could do it. And not just be friends with somebody, but be lovers. The same thing that Tom, I think, is the same sort of feeling that Tom had when he says, "our women."
Well, you feel exactly as Tom does, but the other side of the coin.
Yeah.
And then you really understand how Tom feels.
I think Tom and I are pretty close on a lot of things. Right, I consider my women, black women.
Black women are your women. He considers white women his women.
And I would really find it very hard to trust a Negro after knowing you. You're the first Negro I've known at all well, who's been both articulate and outspoken and near. And, I really feel I wouldn't go out of my way to meet a Negro now.
What did you get out of this session? What one thing comes through?
The one thing that I got out of this thing is, that there's a lot more rationalists in the world than I thought there were. So, for me, it's a quagmire.
I'm not really sure what the whole experience means to me yet. I think I'll see, months from now, maybe years from now, things to be here that I haven't seen yet, clearly. But I know it shook me up. It's made me less sure, if not more sure, about what I really believe in.
I'm scared.
For you?
I'm scared. And I'm worried. Because what I see is you people going to run this world. You're going to run it in circles like it's been run for hundreds of years. And I'm not blaming you for that because I don't think you can be certain. The reason you can't be certain is because you don't have the answer. But I can't excuse myself on that basis. I'm going to say I do have some convictions, and they are right, and anything else is wrong. I say with Paul, I can do all things through Christ, which strengtheneth me. As if I'm right, and I am, then you're all going to eternal condemnation, and this whole world is going with you.
It's too bad. What's too bad about that? It sounded like, just shattered you or something. What's too bad about a guy who has faith in something doesn't wonder about anything else? Why? It's dangerous to you because he believes in something.
No, that's not why. It's not that he believes. It's not that he believes in something.
Huh?
It's not that so much that he believes in something. It's that he believes unswervingly that there is no possibility of error.
Last night, I guess, very late, you read to me out of the Bible, right? And you read to me about the prophecy about the Jews taking Jerusalem again.
and the Gentiles and the fig tree. What were you trying to say to me then? Were you sort of trying to convert me?
Of course I was trying to convert you, Dennis, because I'm concerned about you.
That's what makes you dangerous. It's you. That kind of thinking. I'm right, and nobody can tell me I'm wrong. I mean, you know, that's exactly, he talked about the world's been going around in circles by people like us. People like us don't move the world sometimes. It's true. You may sit there and you say there'll always be war, but people like you cause wars.
Where is prejudice? Among too many other places right here, in these products of the educated, affluent American middle class. Their varied prejudices are passed from generation to generation, from home to church to school. They result not in the riot or the lynching, but too often in restricted, unwritten employment practices, all the quiet, insidious expressions of prejudice in respectable America. And if it exists even here, how can it be eliminated in other sectors of our society? So disturbingly, there is no way of gauging how long it will be before Dennis Feldman, or any of us, can realize this seemingly modest hope.
I don't want to be stereotyped. I'm me, and that's what I want to be.